All right, it's official. You guys know what I've been painting at my events this past month. This painting right here, I'm gonna teach you step by step on how to actually paint this. But remember, make mistakes, mess up. It's all good. Just have fun and enjoy the process. At the end of this video, I'm actually going to show you some of the awesome artists that really have taken this under their wing at my events and really did their own creation, showed you how it's done with me. Again, you are unique. Your art is so unique and so different, and that's what makes you special. Let's get started on this painting. So as you can see, I am using a big flat brush, and I dipped a little bit of blue and a little bit of plain white right on my brush. And all I'm doing is just using that paint that just is so imperfect and just bringing it from the top down. I'm not blending it and I'm not really mixing the paint. I'm actually wanting it to be a little bit streaky. So as you can see, take a look at that. You're gonna see different blues start to come off my brush, and I'm doing that same up and down process. Now I'm not going all the way down to the bottom, because I want to go ahead and leave some room for my horizon line coming up. But take a look at that. You can see that each one of these paintings, even the one that you're going to do at home, is unique. I can do this painting, gosh, 100 times, 200 times, and it will not come out the exact same. And also, too, I always tell people, nature isn't perfect. So get that weight off of your shoulders too, all right? Just have fun with it. You can see, look at that. I'm going up and down, not blending too much, but you can see I'm connecting these light blues, a little bit darker blues, and that is gonna be naturally giving you kind of some lowlights and highlights with your waterfall. Now, the reason I started with the waterfall first is because it's the very furthest thing away. It's one of the furthest things away in this painting, and you don't want to outline every single little detail, so that's why you start with the furthest thing back. And acrylic paint dries so fast that we can actually use that to our advantage. Now, as you can see, I stopped making the waterfall, and I started going on a horizontal motion, that same kind of motion. I just put a little bit more plain blue on my brush. All right, so I put a little bit more plain blue on the same brush. It's a flat brush, and I'm just going back and forth, side to side motion, hoping for mistakes, hoping that there are some different lines being made in here, because again, nature's not perfect, and I'm gonna use that to my advantage. Now, as an artist, you are more than welcome to paint the side edges as you're going along as well. Typically during my events, I just leave them kind of just open and blank, and people can do whatever they want. But, you know, do whatever you'd like, whatever you're feeling. Also too, now you see I've got purple. Holy cow, we got some purple on there. And I know I didn't cover this at the very beginning here, but the colors that we're going to be using are white, blue, purple, black, red. All right, so what I did was I dunked it same brush right in the purple and white. And I'm just making the same streak pattern up and down on the sides of that waterfall. Look at that cool color. Really, really pretty. Now I'm gonna go ahead and put a little bit more on my brush, and here we go on the other side. So once I'm done with this step here, you're gonna see this entire face of this canvas is covered with paint. It's covered that quickly. That is amazing. And you can see, look at how pretty, look how imperfect it is, and I'm just loving that. All right, I'm putting a little bit more purple, a little bit more white on my brush, and just gonna go ahead and just kind of touch up, finish up, get the face of this going. Again, I'm blending a little bit too. I bring a little bit of purple into my blue of that waterfall there, and you can see it just really creates awesome colors. As I'm dipping my brush, sometimes I'll put a little bit more purple, sometimes I'll put a little bit more white. It just depends on how bright you want it or how many low lights you want. It's going to be unique, it's going to be different, and you're going to get a great feel for this. Now, as you can see, I left that right side open a little bit because we're going to use a dangerous color soon. But as the water goes, take a look what I'm doing. I'm using the thin side of my brush. I put a little bit of purple, blue on there, and I'm creating some low lights, some texture, breaking up some of that original blue in that water. Now I dunked my brush in that dangerous color I was telling you about, plain black. Now this is a great step because as you can see, it's starting to frame the painting. It's kind of like, putting these outer edge, awesome, really darker. I really love contrast. So as you can see, there's a fair amount of contrast going on right now. Some of the purple is kind of faded out, so I still want to see some of it, but you know what? I'm adding a little bit of black. Again, I'm framing this out a little bit, and it really makes your colors pop. It's such a cool step. You can see, look at this. And be careful with it because you know what? Black's a dangerous color. Now down below, you can see I'm adding some awesome texture rocks. All I'm doing is kind of putting plain black on my brush and blotting and dabbing. Now watch this. I'm going to make a little bit of a blotting and dabbing move. And as you can see, it's a little bit flatter on the bottom, and then it goes a little bit more high textured and pops up on the top. Again, land is so unique, so different, so I know I'm not messing up, I know I'm not making mistakes, and that, my friends, is what it's all about. Now, every once in a while, you need to take a breather, and now's that time. Let some of this paint dry off a little bit, give yourself time. Don't feel like you have to rush it and have to press it so quickly. Take your time, take a breather, go get something to eat, something to drink, and just breathe. Now that you've had that time just for yourself, we're gonna come back to this and you can see I'm just using the same exact brush, adding some black streaks in there, changing the dynamic, making it really all my own, all right? I want you to have that unique touch to it. And as you can see, we're gonna start on another new process here. I'm gonna go ahead and dip my brush and I put just plain white on it, because now it's highlight time. Oh yeah, we got some highlights going. Now that blue has already started to dry off a little bit because that was our first step. Again, acrylic paint's gonna do that. It's gonna dry off pretty quick for you, so that's awesome. But this means now I can add a layer of highlights, little tiny streaks. Now you can use a small brush, you can use a medium brush, but as you can see, I'm using the thin part of my brush just to make these like cool little streaks and really change the whole texture. Look at that depth now. Look at that. Again, I'm just going at it. Like, I don't want you to overthink it. I don't overthink it. Everything's gonna be unique about this painting. Look at that, nice, just having fun. And sometimes you go from the top down, and sometimes you go from the bottom up. And you just connect or you disconnect, and you can see that I'm just having some fun with it, making it unique. Now, look at that, look at that. You can use the thick side of your brush. See how I'm turning the brush? I'm doing different brush strokes, just changing the dynamic. Man, I'm messing up. Look at that. Yeah, I love it. I love it. All right, look at this. Nice. Get it going. And it's almost adding like a little bit of a splash you can see on the bottom. You see that little texture, that little bit of fine tuning I'm doing? Just a tiny bit of paint on my brush will do that for you. There we go. Let's get a little bit more white. There we go. Perfect. Now, check this out. I'm adding some side-to-side motion streaks. I would recommend using a small brush on this step here, but I'm breaking up the water down below even more. I'm staying away from that black because it's still drying off. But man, now you're seeing more texture, but I'm using the same brush that I've been using the whole time. It's hilarious. A lot of people get lost in that translation sometimes. But you can use as many brushes as you want, whatever you'd like. Now I put some more plain white on my brush, and now take a look. I'm blotting and dabbing and messing up, making some splashing happen down below, right where that impact point is. That waterfall is hitting that bottom bit of water. And just look at that. Just having fun. I'm not overthinking it. And I like to do it fast because that helps me not overthink it. But look at that. Oh, nice. It's coming into my water a little bit because we do want it to connect now a little bit. And I'm twisting and turning the brush. I want those imperfections, so I want that brush to do the work for me. Oh yeah, it's coming together nice. Hopefully maybe you got some music going on, man. I like to dab to the beat. I like to put music on typically in the background, especially during that step, just blot, dab, blot, dab. There you go. And then I'm bringing a couple little splashes down into my water, just showing that there are some imperfections and there is such an impact of texture. Now this was a new step. We've been doing streaking, we've been doing all that kind of stuff. Very smooth kind of painting. This one's blot, dab. Look at that. Keep going. There we go. And sometimes I like to use the leftover paint remnants on my brush, and sometimes I head back and add a little bit of highlight streaks or different things like that. You can just keep going back and forth between your painting. Also, another step I've been doing at the events here, and I don't think it's in this video, I like to liquefy some of that white, and then I hold my brush about a couple inches away and I fling and flick the bristles, making a lot of really cool texture happen on this painting. Gives that illusion of like mist or really fine splashing, things like that. And again, I'm going back, adding some highlights, of course. As an artist, you tend to do that. Sometimes you got to put that brush down and you got to say, okay, I did it, I'm good, I got it. Man. So with these paintings, if I can paint it in a half an hour, that means I can teach it to a class in 2. That's typically how long my events last, a couple hours, but it is so high impact, it is so adrenaline rush. My painting events are not the quiet, let's go take a nap, kind of thing. These things are popping and locking. They are going off. I've got music bumping, I've got laser lights, fog machine going. I am like DJing through the whole thing. We're doing games, we're doing all sorts of cool stuff. And it really like takes your mind off the trying to be so perfect with painting. There you go. So take a look at that. Now, eventually we're going to switch this up here. Once you feel like you're done. I always tell everybody during this process, as you're kind of continuing, step away from your painting. Come a little bit away from it and envision it a little bit further away. It's going to make all the difference in the world. You're seeing it up close as you're painting right there. So you're seeing every little detail, every little mishap or mistake, as you call it. What we're going to do is we're going to step away and you're going to start seeing your painting make more sense. Okay, now we're going to start working on details. All right, I'm going to take a small brush, put a little bit of plain blue on there. It's okay if there's a tiny bit of white, but I'm going to blot and dab on these rocks. I'm going to texturize these rocks in the water. By adding a tiny bit of highlight on these rocks, it really gives them a little bit of dimension. Okay, you're starting to see a little bit more realism. You're starting to see depth. And when you start working on your details, that's when you know you're starting to get closer and closer to being done with your painting. Look at that. On each of these rocks, they're unique. Again, I'm doing the blotting, dabbing technique. Very random. And just having fun with the process there. All right. Now, I want you to also find a small brush or a brush you feel comfortable making fine lines with, because we're about to make this tree. I'm going to make a line coming up from that first initial rock. Coming up, now as you can see, it's not going straight up. They're not perfect lines, but they're thin lines. And the reason why you want to start with thin lines is because you want to just play it safe. You can start making your branches a little bit thicker as you kind of go along, especially with your tree trunk. And as you kind of taper off away from your first initial branches and your tree trunk, look at those lines tend to get a little bit thinner. Now, as you can see, I'm very much at random kind of putting a little bit of tiny paint of black on my brush, and now I'm going to make the tree trunk a little bit thicker. You see that line? It's starting to get a little bit thicker now. There we go. I started off thin and started making the line thicker. Don't do it the opposite way. You won't be able to get it done, okay? I always make these trees unique. These branches just pop up. Now, if you're like, oh my gosh, I messed up on a branch, don't worry about it, because we can cover it up with some blossoms coming up here soon. That's the best part. Now, these branches, we're going to want to get them dried off quick. So you don't want to add a ton of paint. All right, you can see I'm just barely putting a little bit on there, and I'm barely, just very gently touching the canvas with this brush. I typically like to use a flat brush or an angled brush with this, just because that has that sharp, nice edge to them. And that way it helps me make really thin lines. You can see, look at that branch. I messed up on it. It's a little bit thicker right there, but that's okay. That's nature. And also, too, I can put some blossoms over it. Ah. All right. There we go. I'm letting those branches dry off, stepped away from my canvas a little bit. Now I'm going to take a medium brush, put some plain white on it, and I'm going to start blotting and dabbing very randomly little areas of this tree. Now, if the branches are nice and dry, I can weave in and out. Now, you can do plain white. I use that sometimes, like in this example, as a primer. Acrylic paint dries so fast that we can actually let it dry off, and then we can start adding color. Or in my events, we just sometimes just go at it. We'll just dip some plain red in there, add a little bit of white sometimes on my brush, and that adds that beautiful color, highlights, lowlights, all that kind of stuff. But really take a look at this. You can see the clusters are very not the same, okay? They're not alike. They're completely different. They're not symmetrical too. They're not like a perfect looking tree. When you go outside, do you see that perfect looking tree? Probably not. So you want to go ahead and just use that to your advantage and just keep on going. Blot, dab. Again, put on some tunes. Get that beat going. That's just me. That's not music. Man, look at that. It's coming alive. And you can see I'm just using plain white. Again, you're more than welcome to put a little bit of red on your brush while doing this to even make it more faster of a process. And I kind of judge at my events like how far we are in the event to see like, okay, do we want to do it this way, or do we want to just go at it and have just plain red and pink on our brush and just do it to it. In this example, I'm actually starting with a primer. But as you can see now, you're really starting to see why we started with the waterfall in the back, why we started that first. Because we don't want to outline every little detail. It would have been so tough to start with the tree first, right? You would have had to like go weave in and out of there and try to figure out how to do that. It's just no way. Don't even do it. Acrylic paint dries fast. Layer on top of layer. That's what you want to do. All right. There you go. Now, it's go time. What do I mean by go time? It's eye candy time. I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about the paint. I'm going to put some plain red on my brush, and I'm going to just go ahead and blot and dab right over some of these primered areas. That paint's probably still a little bit wet, and I know it is, but that's okay. This is my last layer to this painting. So I can add a good amount of paint on my brush and make high impact. I can add a ton more. I don't have to worry about it drying off because this is my last step on here. And here we go. Just adding more and more. Blot, dab, gently touch the canvas. Remember when you're dabbing, try not to pierce through the canvas. Some people really go at it. And you're like, whoa, hey, 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 hey. There. But you can see, look at the natural highlights and lowlights just coming right off my brush. Just naturally. I'm letting the brush do the work. I don't want to overthink it. I don't want to overdo it. Let that brush do that work. Nice. And sometimes, look at that. I'm holding onto the canvas because I know I'm just like, all right, I'm blotting and dabbing. I don't want that canvas moving too much. There we go. Hold on for dear life. There you go. Hats. All right. So keep working on this, guys. It's a process. You know, you're just gently touching it. But again, you're going fast. If you're keeping up with me during this entire process, you're painting fast. And that's really difficult for a lot of experienced artists to do. A lot of them like to take their time. A lot of perfectionists out there. I get it. It's okay. Nothing wrong with it. That's just their style. For me, my style, gosh, I just can't sit at a painting, the same painting, forever and ever. All right. I got to paint and move on. But that's what doing those painting events, that's what it's done to me. Okay. I don't really have the patience anymore for like those elongated paintings. But man, I got to give credit to some of those artists out there. Dang, the realism on some of them is just, it looks like a photograph. It's like, holy moly, how did you do that? I'm so impressed by everybody's art out there. You know why? Because it's unique. It's different than mine. Yours is going to be different than mine. Don't be afraid. Just practice. There you go. Now, sometimes you can use a larger brush. You can cover some of these blossoms a little bit faster. It's up to you. You can use a small brush as well if you feel more comfortable with that. There we go. Blot and dab. Now, soon coming up, I'm going to be showing you some photos, just a couple photos of some of the events and people painting this exact painting that you just painted. It's coming up. Man, we have a great time at my events. I really hope I can paint with you live one day. It is something special. There we go. There we go. Now, as you're kind of wrapping up and getting done with this painting, also too, think about, you know, we got a last step. We want to sign this painting off. We want to date it maybe. I like to do that typically on the bottom right-hand corner. A small brush would work. Sometimes I like to put a 1 of 1 because it truly is. And then I like to put the year, like 22. Eventually, when this video is very old, you'll see like, whoa, this was painted back in the day. And there you go. I added a little bit more red on there just to darken it up. The more red you add, the more fuchsia it's going to be because there's a little bit of white still on that brush. But that adds low lights. And again, you can add some random, maybe little blossoms on your rocks. Take a look. You can add little details. Look at that. Taking a small, tiny brush, adding some little details of, you know, those little highlights in the water. You're seeing it up close, a little bit closer now, so you can see the mistakes. You can see the mess ups. Look at that. That water's fluid, man. Nice. And I'm just using a real sharp edge brush, tiny brush, to make some of these cool little fun highlights. Go, go, go. Nice. Got to have some highlights near the rocks because that water is impacting on that rock. And look at that. Signed it off 1 of 1. And it's 22. I hope you enjoyed that. Well, you did it. That's awesome, man. You know what? You stuck to it. You really made it happen. I'm very, very proud of you. Just enjoy the process. That's what it's all about, guys. I hope to see you on the next video. Take care.